Welcome back to another Sci Friday, everyone. My name is Brandon. I'm the Education Director here at the Grout Museum. Today I'm coming to you with a new experiment, one that you can do at home pretty easily. We're calling this one the 8-layer density experiment, because we're going to have 8 different liquids that are going to sit on top of each other in layers because they have different densities. And as we go through those densities, I'll explain kind of what density means. Our first ingredient in our 8-layer density experiment is honey. Second, we have pancake syrup. And then a slightly lighter one, we have what's called light corn syrup, regular dish soap, milk, water, vegetable oil, and last but not least, baby oil. So, when we talk about density, we talk about a specific number. And in blue, I have the numbers for each of the ingredients that we've talked about so far. So, for example, at the bottom here, we have honey at 1.42, and that is in grams per cubic centimeter. So, before I talk about the rest of them, I want to talk about that measurement. Grams per cubic centimeter. What that is that grams is a weight. And so if you have a certain amount of weight in a cubic centimeter, that's how you figure out density. So a good example is this little cube right here in my hand. This little cube is 1 cubic centimeter. So for honey to have a density of 1.42 grams per centimeter, that means if I had a perfect little centimeter cube like this of honey, it would weigh 1.42 grams. And the same for all the rest of our ingredients. So the pancake syrup, 1.37. So slightly less weight in the same amount of space. And then light corn syrup, 1.33. Dish soap, 1.06. Milk, 1.03. Water is always exactly 1 gram per centimeter. Vegetable oil is actually lighter than water, so it's at 0.92 grams per centimeter. And then baby oil at 0.83. So now that we kind of have a better understanding of what density is, we're going to go ahead and run our experiment. Now, if you want to at home, all of this stuff is pretty much stuff you can have at home and do the experiment along with me or on your own at a later time. If you don't happen to have one of these things that we have, you don't need it. Just make sure you do them in the same order. So for example, if you don't have the light corn syrup, because that's not super common, just skip it. Go straight from the pancake syrup to the dish soap. So first of all, you notice we added a little bit of food coloring to our water just so it's a little easier to see. But also we want to stop at this point because if you are doing this and you're at the step where you're going to put water in, you want to make sure you do this one very slow so it doesn't mix with your soap that you've already put in. And this one you want to make sure you squirt it onto the sides. Don't let it fall right in the middle, otherwise it'll start mixing with the soap. All the steps after water, you want to make sure that you are doing it in that same way. You're doing it slow and against the side of the glass. Otherwise, these ones are all really light and they like to mix quite a bit. Alright, so that was our 7-layer density experiment. Now, if you think back to the beginning of the experiment, I'm pretty sure we called it an 8-layer density experiment. What happens sometimes when you're doing science and experimentation is things don't work out quite the way you think they're going to. So in our experiment, it turns out that using 2% milk is actually denser than soap instead of the other way around. So we actually just decided to cut the milk out of our experiment. And another thing you may notice is that our light corn syrup actually ended up being a little denser than the maple syrup. So that can happen sometimes too, just because different companies make different types of maple syrup, and there was never really anything specified as to what kind of maple syrup to use. So sometimes things get a little mixed up and you have to kind of adjust for that when you're doing experiments. So I have a lot of different objects, same shape, but different densities. So for example, a marble, a bouncy ball, golf ball, a foam golf ball, and an actual styrofoam ball. And so with these, what you can do is you can drop them into your now 7-layer or however many layer density experiment, and you can tell how dense these different objects are based on how far down they go into the tube. So for example, if I drop one of these in and it drops all the way down to the bottom, we know its density is greater than that of honey. So its density would be more than 1.42. So the first one we're going to do is the marble. Now when you drop it in, you want to put it right at the surface before you let it go. You don't want to drop it from up high, otherwise you can ruin the whole thing and the layering can kind of mess up. So if we drop our marble in and we watch where it goes down to, it sinks down to the bottom of our honey. And so that means that the density of that marble is greater than 1.42 grams per milliliter. So it could be like 1.52, something like that. It goes all the way down to the bottom of the honey, and so that's how we can know its density. So our next one we're going to do is the golf ball. And do the same thing, put it right at the surface and just let go. And so it sinks down into our soap layer, but it doesn't go into the maple syrup layer. And so that means that it is more dense than soap, but it's less dense than maple syrup. So it floats on maple syrup, but it does not float on soap or anything else above it. It's denser than everything else above it. Our next one is going to be a bouncy ball. And we're going to do the same thing. The bouncy ball is about the same density. You can see it right over here. And it went to about the same place as our golf ball. Next we have our foam ball. Floats on top of the baby oil, which means our styrofoam ball, which is even less dense, is going to do the same thing. Now, when you do this experiment at home, you can choose to use any other objects that you want. You can try anything else, see what its density is. Of course, get your parents' permission before you do any of it, though. So, thank you for coming to another Sci Friday. Hopefully you guys try this experiment at home with your parents. If you do, send us a video clip or something of you guys doing it, and let me know if there's any other experiments you want us to do in the future. Thanks, guys.